I'm going to bring the meeting of the Charter Revision Commission to order. I'd like to indicate who I know is present: Adam Teller, Jay Brutz, Eleanor Georges, Jim Aldrich, Rich Hayes, and by phone only, John Toomey. And Nick Levine is here from the Community Voice Channel. Are there any other attendees? Okay, I don't hear any. Our clerk, as I just mentioned, should be joining us as soon as he gets out of his other meeting. And whatever he misses at the beginning of the meeting, he'll be taking from the recording. At this point, I'd like to ask for any public comment. Okay, I hear none. Let's move on then to item 3 on the agenda, which is to act on the minutes of the September 10th regular meeting and the September 22nd special meeting. And I'd like to take those separately. So is there anyone ready to make a motion on the September 10th minutes?
I move that the September 10th minutes be approved.
Seconded.
Thank you. That's Adam moved, Jay seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Go ahead, Eleanor.
On page 3 of the meeting minutes, my name is at the end of line 2, and I don't know why.
Yes, I saw that. Yep.
And then the other comment that I have is it was corrected in the minutes that we're going to be going over in just a minute. But in this particular set of minutes, I would really like to have the BOF, when we're talking about the new finance committee or commission, whatever we're going to call it, be called something besides the Board of Finance. I just think it's very confusing when we're talking about the Board of Finance that currently is and the Board of Finance in the restructure that we want to make. So in my meeting minutes here, I've changed all the Board of Finance to be Finance Committee, if that's what we're going to call it. I just think we should be consistent.
I agree with Eleanor.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
do you think we should actually go back and change the minutes, or do you think that we should just use Board of Finance Committee going forward?
Well, in the subsequent minutes that we're going to be looking at in a moment, about halfway through, our minute taker, I think it's Michael Stankoff, actually does change Board of Finance to Finance Committee. But it's not reflected in the September 10th minutes. And I think it should be back that early because we have made some drastic proposals that are not the current Board of Finance.
I would, personally, I would recommend against changing the minutes retroactively because they are probably an accurate reflection of what we said at the time. We were just saying the wrong thing. So I would lean towards changing our language as we talk about it going forward, trying to be careful. But I think he took the minutes off the recording on a lot of these. So he probably was just writing down what we were saying. We were probably just saying Board of Finance. I wouldn't want to retroactively change our language in the minutes when we actually said one thing. That's my thought.
Yeah, the other thing I'm concerned about is that how will Michael know which references to Board of Finance we want to leave and which ones do we want to actually change to Finance Committee?
Well, I went through and it was pretty clear. He's trying to be very clear also, which I really appreciate. He notes it's a new model of the Board of Finance, or whether or not the new Board of Finance. So he does, in some cases, he's actually calling it out that it's not the old Board of Finance, but it's not in every case that it's happening. And I think if somebody was reading this, they wouldn't be quite clear on it. I would be happy to speak to Michael Stankoff afterwards and fill him in on where I've made all of those changes, but whatever you guys want to decide. I just noted that those changes needed to be made. I think they need to be made in this edition, but that's not necessary, I guess.
Well,
Adam?
the draft, Adam, the draft that we were discussing specifically referred to Finance Commission or Finance Committee for that very reason that Eleanor's pointing out, is that to avoid that kind of confusion. If we weren't rigorous in the way we talked about it, that was the draft we were discussing. So I don't have a problem with correcting it to say Finance Committee where we were talking about the draft specifically.
Glenn,
Yes, John.
maybe if we do choose to correct this set of minutes, we could either use the old Board of Finance or the former Board of Finance and the new Finance Committee, just to make a distinction so people can get a clearer idea. Because, yeah, we're basically always calling it Board of Finance. That's just out of habit.
What's your opinion on whether we should change these minutes?
It would take a bit of time and effort to go through each and every one of them to find out which one we meant to say. But it sounds like Eleanor has gone through that process and she's very thorough. And I think maybe what she suggested, that she submit her changes or corrections or whatever we want to call them to Mike and have that, and we can, when they get, and we should approve them once they've been corrected, if we choose to do that. Otherwise, I'm not sure how many people are ever going to go back and read these minutes, but it would be nice to have some kind of a long-term record from a historical perspective.
That I'd be fine with that. I think, Eleanor, if you wouldn't mind sending me, maybe you could scan your copy where you have marked up
I can
changes,
actually,
and
I'm
then
used
just let
to,
me take a look at it and you and I can discuss that.
yeah, that would be fine. I'm used to these kinds of edits, and I think scanning it would be more work than it's worth. I think I can just distill it down to a really quick email for you.
Okay, good. Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah,
So we
I
will
am.
take a vote and vote no on this motion.
Okay. Did you have, sorry, Jay, did you say, I missed the first part of that. Did you
So
say we should?
we should probably take a vote and vote no on this motion. We'll all take the Rich position on this one, and you guys can come back later.
Well, I think
I have, so may I ask you
What if Rich wrote yes?
From a parliamentarian point of view, it would be better if we tabled these minutes until the two of you go through the process. So,
well, first,
we can either vote, we can vote on the motion on the floor.
we're still in the discussion phase, actually, of this. So let's get any other comments on the September 10th
Yeah,
minutes
yeah.
out, and then we'll deal with the issue of whether we're going to vote on them or table them. So is there any other discussion on the September 10th minutes?
Page 7, item 6, correspondence is misspelled.
Yep.
I'm only doing that because the lawyers among us will know if anybody puts a document in front of you, you better mark something up.
Yes, anything else?
Or you don't get paid.
Yeah, right. On the bottom of page 5, did I really say at the last sentence in that last paragraph? Did I really say the pleasant symmetry? I don't recall it, but if I did, good for me.
Okay.
Our language is getting more colorful. Sorry.
I'll take it.
I had a couple, let's see if I can find these. This is under item 3, act on the minutes of the meetings. Under discussion, you see the second line that begins missing? The line actually begins, E. George has noted 2 misspellings on page 5. Individuals was missing, and then there's a space and. Do you see that that word should probably be deleted. And does everybody follow that?
Yep.
Okay. And then under item 4, continuing review of town charter, paragraph 4, the last line is incomplete. That's the one Eleanor brought up. Farther down, under the paragraph that started, G, Marion voiced her support. Kappa, I believe, this is CAPPA. Isn't that only supposed to be CAPA? Isn't that the acronym for it? I don't think
Yes.
they're. Okay, so the P should be removed.
Yes, that's one thing.
Okay, thank you. Those are the only comments I had. Does anybody else have any comments on those minutes?
You've caught all of mine. It's good.
Okay, good. So now, Mr.
Good
Parliamentarian,
evening, Commissioners.
hi, Michael, how are you?
I'm doing very well. I do apologize deeply for my tardiness. I've just managed to walk into my house and load up Zoom. I was on a phone call on my drive home, so
Well,
I'm here now.
No, that's fine. We didn't expect you until a little bit into the meeting anyway. So, and you're lucky you missed a long discussion about what we're going to do with the minutes. And we're still not finished with that discussion, but just wait to see what happens here.
Perfect.
So Mr. Parliamentarian, there's a motion on the table. If somebody wants to table these minutes, the motion is to approve, but if the commission now wants to decide to table these minutes, how can that happen?
Well, I think the cleanest way is if we're all in agreement, we just all vote no. And then you can bring it up again at the next meeting. That's the cleanest way. Then we don't have something sitting in the order of precedence somewhere. The dirty way is someone makes a motion to lay this on the table and we vote on that and we agree on that. And then it's hanging over the head and can be resurrected at any time, which for this is being a non-controversial issue shouldn't matter. But the cleanest thing is just to vote it down and come back later. There's nothing that says we can't just make another motion later.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to ask for, if there's no other discussion, I'm going to ask all in favor.
Aye.
That was you, John?
Yes. Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Aye. Nay.
Nay.
Oh,
So we've got, Rich, did you
I'm
vote?
sorry.
I did.
My fault. No. Pardon me.
Rich, I didn't catch your vote.
Abstaining.
You're abstaining. Okay. So we have five opposed, 1 in favor, 1 abstention. John, I know you made a mistake. Let's just leave the vote that way. I don't know if you can change your vote.
I did, but it really doesn't matter.
Okay, so let's move on to the September 22nd minutes. Is there somebody ready to make a motion on that?
I move.
Oh,
Adam?
Go ahead, Adam. I move to approve the September 22nd minutes.
Is there a second?
I second.
Jay? Okay, is there any discussion? Eleanor, you're muted.
At the very top, September 10th should be changed to September 22nd. And then I had the same issue with this one. I marked up Board of Finance with Finance Committee on all the spots. But then right around page 2, there's no page numbers on this one, but right around page 2, Michael Stankoff started changing all of them to Finance Committee, and he got them all right. So I have no issue with the end of it. It's just at the very beginning, we were still calling it Board of Finance.
Absolutely. That was actually a question I had intended to bring before the board as to whether or not we should use the exact terminology of Finance Commission from every point going forward with the new model. But I will make sure that is reflected in the revised minutes.
Well, what we did, Michael, was the reason we did not approve the first set of minutes is because we would like to ask you to change all the references that Eleanor is going to send to you to,
I'm sending them to you.
yeah, right.
Right.
Okay, she's going to send them to me. I'm going to send them to you where Board of Finance should be changed to Finance Committee.
Perfect.
So we'll let you know the exact spots.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Eleanor, are there few enough on the September 22nd minutes so that we can just list them for Michael, or do you also want?
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's only 5 places where it needs to be changed, and they're all on the first page.
Okay, then why don't, Michael, could you take note of that? And that way we won't have to.
Yes, I actually, if I'm looking at the first page, I can see 1, 2, 3, 4. I can actually probably see all 5 of the places where this would need to be changed.
6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6 of them that need to be changed.
Yes. The final one being as the majority of this hypothetical BOF is elected.
That's correct.
So I will change all of those to FC for Finance Commission.
And then
I actually think the correct word should be committee. I believe that.
yeah,
I believe the commission
Yeah,
is
that's
naturally
what we've
an
been saying.
appointed board, and a committee is a like an less formal board. I know that definition is not really exact, but I believe it would. Well, I mean, we can actually talk about that. I'm not. I can't say that is for sure what we should do, but FC is going to be good. Yes, Eleanor.
on the second page, the 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph down that starts R. Hayes asked. In the middle of that, we have the FC that was reelected could be passed over by the BOF for appointment. And I think that's supposed to be Board of Selectmen / Board of Education rather than the Board of Finance.
I believe you are correct. Page 2, paragraph 4, R. Hayes. R. Hayes and Untitled discussed the merits of whether or not it'd be good to create a mechanism by which the BOS or BOA might remove. Passed over by the BOS. Yes, I see where that is, and that has changed.
Yeah, right now it reads Board of Finance for appointment, but I think it's supposed to be the Board of Selectmen / Board of Education.
Yes.
I think that's correct.
Fixed.
I think that's correct. That was reporting my description of how that would happen. Adam.
There's a paragraph a little farther down that begins J. Brudds and A. Teller spoke in favor of allowing. If you go down to the last line of that paragraph, it reads, and leave the language as it current exists. So that should be currently.
Noted.
Are there any other suggested changes on these minutes? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of the motion to approve, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions?
I'm opposed.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, back to the charter. So what I'd like to start off with tonight is final discussion on the issue of whether to merge the Inland Wetlands Commission with the Planning and Zoning Commission. That's where we left off last meeting. And then once we get by that, we will pick up other issues on Chapter 3 as outlined in Rich and Adam's memo. So getting back to the IWC PZC discussion, what I'd like to just add a little bit more information that I added to my comments last month. And my comments last month, mainly last week, well, this was last month, talked about the technical knowledge that wetlands commissioners need. I also wanted to point out that the wetlands agency is a regulatory agency, and there is a whole statutory setup that has to be followed exactly in order to make sure that applications are processed. There is, and these are statutes. These are not Bolton regulatory regulations. So you have to what the agency when it gets an application in, it has to decide whether the activity is significant or insignificant, and a whole discussion is involved in that, because that you have to look at drainage, you have to look at effect on habitat, you have to look at possibility of erosion. So there's a whole discussion that goes into whether an activity is significant or insignificant. If it's determined to be insignificant, then it can be either delegated to the agent, or the commission can act on it, and that process goes fairly quickly. If it's deemed to be significant, the next question is there a feasible and prudent alternative to that activity? And that's a whole separate discussion. And you have to look at, well, does the road have to be right there next to the brook, or can the road be moved? And then there's a whole discussion, well, the builder is going to lose some lots, or the frontage is going to be much smaller. What do we do about this? Or so there's a whole discussion that goes into the question of feasible and prudent. And so this this is all going toward my position that I stated last month, that I feel that the Wetland Commission should stay separate from P&Z because of the level of knowledge that the Wetland Commissioners have to have as they approach each application. And to layer that on top of the knowledge that Planning and Zoning Commission members have to have, I think is too much. It would be you'd be putting two regulatory schemes in one board. I don't think that's going to streamline the process, because a wetlands application could take up a whole meeting, and then that would mean a second meeting to deal with all the planning and zoning issues. So I wanted to add that whole layer about the regulatory aspect, which I hadn't touched on last month. So that all just goes to, so you know my position on that. Eleanor?
Gwen, could you tell me if someone wants to build a building in town right now, for instance, a new doctor's office or some business, what would they have to do after, or maybe before even buying a piece of land? What is the process they would have to go through right now?
I really can't speak to that. I bet Adam's better at speaking to that. But I know that there's an informal discussion it should be had with Patrice Carson to start off the process. And that's where we would hope that a lot of preliminary issues would be settled.
I don't know who Patrice is.
Patrice is our Director of Community Development. And so then, do you really, yeah. So that's the beginning, the informal discussion, and then it goes. Then if there are wetlands involved, it does have to go to inland wetlands first before it goes to P&Z.
Is that something that would happen before they even bought the property?
Many times.
When an applicant for a wetlands permit, the application, if the application is submitted by someone other than the owner, that you can do that, but the owner also has to sign the application.
So if I want to build a business in Bolton, before I would buy the property, I would go talk to the Director of Community Development, and then I would go talk to the Inland Wetland Commission.
That would make sense. You can have an informal discussion with the Inland Wetlands Commission, and Adam, I believe you can have an informal discussion with P&Z too.
That's correct. But not everyone does that.
That's right.
Jim?
So I work with people all the time that want to buy a property and do something with it. I usually advocate that you get all the approvals in place before you buy it, and that you allocate $20,000 to $40,000 in about a year and a half to get to know if you can build or not. That's just a very common time period today.
So can we get, okay, but Adam?
Oh, good. I'm sorry.
I was going to let's focus our conversation back on combining, whether the two commissions should be combined.
That's kind of what I was hoping
Okay.
to talk about. But,
Okay, go ahead.
but Eleanor has her hand up, so.
Okay.
Eleanor, you're muted. You're muted.
We're talking about streamlining though, and before we can talk about combining, I just want to know what isn't streamlined about the process now. So if somebody wants to build right now, what's the process and why would we need to streamline? That's really what I want to know. I just want to understand.
Well, you go through the inland wetlands process, which can take, I mean, there is a built-in 30-day period under statute, not under Bolton regulations. The Inland Wetlands Commission, if I'm remembering this correctly, cannot act during the first month that the application is received. So there's at least a 2-month, it makes it at least a 2-month process, but unless the application is delegated to the inland wetland agent, which the commission often does if it's a really insignificant activity. Like if you've got one corner of your deck that's into the 100-foot regulated area. There was some wild feedback. Yeah, I'm getting feedback. It can be delegated to the agent and then it can go very quickly. Or it could take 3 months maybe. I mean, because you've got that automatic 30-day period, which kicks it into the second meeting. So I would say that on the average, wetlands permits are granted. Now I haven't been the chairman for, 6 or 8 years, but when I was the chairman, I would say we never had an application that lasted more than 3 months. That's my recollection. Adam?
The way the process dovetails, the first thing is that the planning, for any significant application of any substance on a zoning side, the Planning and Zoning Commission or the subdivision side has to hold a public hearing. Okay. And public hearings have to be begun within certain time periods and finished within certain time periods and then decided within certain time periods. And I won't bore you with the specifics, even assuming I could remember them at 7 o'clock at night, middle of the week. But the other feature is that the Planning and Zoning Commission can't act without a wetlands report. And speaking as a longtime member of the Planning and Zoning Commission, it can sometimes be frustrating not to exactly, because we don't sit through those hearings for their processes and we don't see what goes into the report. We just usually just see the outcome, what strict restrictions or what conditions the Wetland Commission has imposed or the wetland agent has imposed. And we then incorporate them in our decision if we're approving as a condition. But to the extent that those decisions have now restricted the project or limited the project in some way, if we don't agree that those limitations are appropriate, then we have to either deny the project or have the applicant reconfigure it in such a way that satisfies the zoning and planning concerns we have. And, we don't always know what went into the wetlands decision. And maybe that's partly on us because obviously we're not going and sitting through those hearings, or our staff isn't going and getting all that information necessarily. We might get a report from the wetlands agent, but we don't necessarily recapture everything that happened in their meetings or hearings and what concerns they expressed, except secondhand through that report or through the staff, or sometimes through the applicant telling us, well, wetlands didn't like this brook crossing, so they wanted the crossing in some other place, and that means the road has to move, and so on. Now, in smaller applications, not such a big deal. But if you're dealing with an application that's going to require road construction or significant public improvements or a lot of other work that is maybe season dependent, if you miss certain windows of timing, it really hurts the applicant and doesn't help the town at all, because it doesn't do anything to make a better decision or a better outcome for anybody. It just slows things down and makes it more expensive. So, you know, I'm not completely convinced about combining these two things. I've said that, I think, because I don't want to combine it just to make the process faster or more efficient. I want to combine it to the extent that combining it gets better decisions made with whatever savings in time and efficiency a combined process would bring out. And, you know, Gwen's completely right. There are technical issues with inland wetlands that zoning and planning doesn't really inherently get that information or get that expertise by what they do. They'd have to go out and get it in order to bring it in. It's not that we don't care or don't consider those things. It's that to some extent we rely on the Inland Wetlands Commission and the staff to do their job right. And once they do it, we accept their result. But I do think that if we were to combine the commissions, just as over 20 years, hopefully I've gotten some expertise in doing a zoning and planning matter, and I'm not a complete idiot, hopefully I would do my job and go out and get that information and training or expertise to do the wetlands things, just as Gwen did and many other commissioners have before them. And if I didn't do that, then hopefully I'd be removed or not reappointed in that job. I guess I've just felt that there are a couple of that when we've had a larger application with something like that, a road, significant public improvements, whatever, that the process has been somewhat held up with no gain by the whipsaw between having to start the public hearings within a certain time, having to have the 30-day window. And again, maybe because we're a small town, we're volunteers, and, you know, typically we'll have one substantive meeting a month for each of these agencies. And there are seasons of the year where it's hard to have that one substantive meeting. If your meeting date happens to run up against July 4th or November or Thanksgiving or Christmas or any other significant holiday, then one of the boards might not be able to meet at the time they otherwise normally would. And if that means that the whole carefully timed process is screwed up, it's hard to fix. And you just delay for no good reason. You know, it just happens. And I know that there have been frustrations from applicants in that situation who've hit that exact situation that, you know, we meet one substantive meeting a month and, you know, we can't have meetings that go past, you know, 11, 12 o'clock. And if there's 3 applications or 2 applications, and one of them might be a small one and one of them might be just somebody looking for, you know, some minor issue. But if there's 3 applications and 3 public hearings, it's pretty hard to get them all done in a time when people are still awake. So,
All right.
and I need my sleep. So that's what I'm looking at. I don't disagree with, I absolutely respect what Gwen's saying about how hard it is to be a diligent commissioner and learn this stuff. But I do think that there is something to be said for having the same group of people make both these decisions, and they better do the work. Or if they don't, they're not doing it right.
Who else would
Sorry
like
if I
to weigh in? Who else? Jim, would you like to weigh in on this?
Yes, thank you. So I think you're vastly oversimplifying the process and simplifying the timeline. The number of consultants you have to hire to get a project and the number of people monetizing the process is significant. And I have to state that in my profession, for what I do, we fully monetize it. So I have a financial incentive. The more complex and bureaucratic it is, my company makes more money. It's not that we're getting rich. It's just that the time consumption is great. For planning and zoning and inland wetlands, there are only 2 of the parties. There's about 10 major parties involved in the process, and each one has different timelines. And there's also subsectors to this also. And one of the hallmarks of the system is the different regulatory agencies don't talk to each other. You've got the DOT involved, and that impacts planning and zoning because you need will the state let you put a road driveway into a property? Does it have to go to, it used to be called the State Traffic Commission. It's called OSTI now. There's on the inland wetlands, many times you have to hire a soil scientist. That's very common. You have to hire botanists. You have to hire entomologists sometimes. And if there's a concern about a species of some kind of animal, let's say an insect on that site, even though there's nobody, if somebody states in a letter, you have to hire someone to investigate that, and that can take months. I've had entomologists hold up projects for years. And if there's an issue with that, you have endangered species, threatened species, and species of concerns, and the rules for each are different. And the governmental oversight is different for each. And if you ever try to hire an entomologist in Connecticut, it's very difficult. And we had a certain tiger beagle on a customer's site, and that ended up costing him $250,000 to remove those tiger beetles. And there was only one person in the Northeast that could do that. When Governor Lamont got elected, I sent you some information. I reached out to some of the people in his administration. I ended up getting to meet several of the commissioners, and I've been working with them, and they are actively trying to streamline the process. What we're doing with this finance committee is similar to what is needed in the building process, where there's much more collaboration and cooperation of all the regulatory players. And instead of talking about a project taking years to get approved, we can get it down to under a year. And as I said at the beginning of this, I try to tell all my customers, you got to plan on spending a lot of money. And after a journey that might take a little bit more than a year, you've got to be ready to walk away from this if the project gets to be significantly more expensive than what you anticipate. The dental facility that we built in Bolton is an example of that, where they spent $300,000 putting in a septic system in 1988, and they went bankrupt, and the site contractor caused harm that 30 years later, a good chunk of the property was now wetlands, and it was never any wetlands. And then on top of that, the town had put a sewer system in, and they told us we couldn't use the $300,000 septic system. And to build that small building, which uses less water than a house, just the connection fee to the Water Pollution Control Authority this is a year into the process, was $60,000 just for that one line item. So very common, hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table. Anything, from my perspective as a user, to have people talk to each other, and the wetlands and planning and zoning submissions, there's months, sometimes 6 months, 8 months work before it actually goes to these commissions. And in that entire period, the designers are interfacing with the experts in the town. And the last step is to go to the commissions. The commissions in general, they are focused on the political, community impact things, listening to the neighbors, but the technical work is handled way up front by specialists, multiple specialists, coordinating with the town. And what's important is when you submit to the town, you'd like to know that the governmental officials understand the project, understand the details, and that these experts are in support of the project. And when you go to the commission, and many times, as Adam says, these meetings go late. You're paying people hundreds of dollars an hour, sometimes 2-3 experts sitting there from 7 p.m. till 10 p.m. before they can make their presentation. And then they have to come back multiple months. But it's not only, and there's no Zoom meetings. I'm hoping they can go to Zoom meetings. I'm hoping they can consolidate this. This is just one small step. to streamline the process if you combined inland wetlands and planning in terms of the commission review, but you could save enormous amounts of time instead of another 30-day step from one to the other. If these two groups were one and ahead of time they were talking to each other and looking at the big picture, and it would be great if they oppose a project, if they could say so earlier on in the process to save people enormous amounts of money if it's really dead on arrival when it goes to a community.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Would anybody else like to weigh in on this question? Jay?
Thank you.
You're muted, Jay.
I have a couple quick questions. Did we say we're going to propose making PZC appointed? Did we? I have a note that says that, but I can't remember what we did there. Were we in agreement on that?
I believe we are.
Okay. So there's no change here between putting this to an elective or an appointed body. No matter what, it'll be appointed. Does this have to be if that's the case, does this have to be a charter decision? Meaning, are we, because the thing that worries me is and I don't know much about this, but that if the workload becomes too high, or if it come to find out it's a lot for one board to know about, are we stuck until we revise the charter again? Or is it something that could be optional by ordinance? Either, the Board of Selectmen may establish an Inland Wetlands Commission. Otherwise, it goes to the PWC. That'd be expensive. PZC. So those are just my two questions and comments there. And I don't have a good feeling one way or the other. I like the idea of streamlining. I like the idea of if I have to hire professionals, I like sending them to one meeting instead of two meetings, because they're going to bill me. For a minimum amount of time to go to each one. So it seems like there is an opportunity to streamline a little there, but I understand it's a little bit separate skill sets. So I don't know where I feel about it. And because I don't know where I feel, I wonder if there's a way this could be we could maintain some optionality so that we don't have to live with it as a charter level decision where it's switchable in between charter revision.
Well, I don't know the answer to that question. Is there a good one? But I do know that there's been a movement over the last 10 or so years to separate inland wetland commissions from conservation commissions. And I believe that has been able to be done without revising charters. So my guess is that this could be, if they're combined and it doesn't work out, they could be split again without a charter revision. That's just my guess based on the example I gave you.
Let me tell you why, Gwen, I think that that would be an issue. A Conservation Commission, as you well know, doesn't have any statutory authority. So both planning and zoning and wetland commissions do have statutory authority, and that's going to that's the difference between those two examples. I'm sorry, Jay, were you done?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'd like to spend a minute or two, since this is essentially my brainchild. And I guess if there was a de facto expert in this field in the town of Bolton, it would be me. I'm going to give you some reasons, and I'm going to tell you first and foremost, in the spirit of cooperation between everybody on this call, that I had an off-the-line conversation with Gwen 2 days after the last meeting, after my staff and I had done some additional research in town in regard to the Wetlands Commission. So one of the challenges in any application when you're from standing on the developer side of the equation moving forward through the process is, do you or will you have a full contingency of members of either commission when you're putting a project forth? So why is that a concern? Well, it's a heck of a lot easier to convince 3 out of 5 than it is 3 out of 3. And one of the challenges that we have in town is that for the last couple of years, we haven't had a full wetland commission. I don't know the reason for it. I'm certain there's a good one. Maybe it's just a lack of interest. Maybe it's challenging to find people to do volunteer work. And we know that all of those things are complicated by the small town we live in. So as a segue to that, the small town that we live in, I've lived here 24 years. The population's been between 4,700 and 5,200 people. It hasn't changed. It goes up and down a little bit every year, but we're always going to be that size town. So there are communities that are significantly 10 times larger, 15 times larger than us that have combined commissions of both the Wetlands and the Planning and Zoning Commission. There are cities with combined wetland planning and zoning commissions. There are large towns with combined wetland planning and zoning commissions. So the reason why, now I suspect maybe Mr. Aldrich and maybe Mr. Teller, but outside of that, I don't think that anybody else has had the experience that I've had generaling land use permits through the different types of committees in the different formats. So Manchester, as we know, has a planning and zoning commission and an inland commission under the same umbrella, as does Mansfield, Connecticut. I don't know if anybody's ever made a presentation in front of either one of those towns. I've made dozens in front of both, well, dozens in front of Manchester and several, probably more than several, probably a half a dozen in front of Mansfield. So I've seen how how those commissions function, and I see that the time that's saved by going through it, and I see the expense that's saved by going through it because I'm the guy that's paying the bills. I also understand that Gwen makes her points in regard to the knowledge. Understand that we have a staff, we pay a staff in this town, we pay a staff for a reason. Not everybody, none of the wetland commissions should believe that they're little miniature DEPs. And that's one of the challenges that we have throughout the state of Connecticut. So we should rely more on our staff. They are the experts. They are the ones that are educated and trained in that regard. And if they believe that the plan has met the burdens or the statutes that are applicable to it, then you know what? The plan should be approved. Part of the conflict or part of the challenge with any land use commission is when politics intervenes into the process. We, I believe, in this community have very, very little of that. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist either. I've seen it at its worst. So one of the things that we have to remember is there are bananas and there are NIMBYs. And in both instances, those people don't do much for the overall process of the land use. And most of the time, and my experience, personal experience, it just costs towns lots of money from a revenue standpoint, costs developers extra additional money from a permitting standpoint, and there is no value in what they're bringing to the table. They're just doing it just to be spiteful. So I feel strongly about this. I think it's going to lessen the conflicts between the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Wetlands Commission. I believe that in reality, this is not a big deal. And I'm going to tell you why I say that. I went through 2 years of the Wetland Commission meetings, and we haven't had a significant application in this town in 13 years. So guys, let's not blow it out of proportion. Most of this stuff is, I want to build a deck in my backyard. I want to put a swimming pool in. We don't have any development. So why don't we have development? There's a lot of reasons why. But one of the things are we're limited by what we have left in from developable land in this town, either based on zoning or based on land that's been preserved. So the reality is, and I'm looking at it from a commercial side, not necessarily a residential side, but even the residential side is significantly lessened over the last 15 years. So I just think that we're making it harder than it should be. And I appreciate your attention. Thank you.
Okay, it's 7:50 and we have not even gotten off of this one issue that we already discussed at length last meeting. So I'm going to have to ask if somebody wants to make a 1 minute brief comment at this point, you're entitled to do it. But I really think we've got to take a vote on this so that we can get off this issue. So Adam, 1 minute.
Very briefly, just the issue of staff. One of the reasons you have more people involved as volunteers is when you don't have enough staff to do all the work. We have part-time staff. Both the wetlands agent and the zoning agent are part-time. So that is a reason to support separate commissions so that they have
now it's my turn. So Adam, I appreciate your thoughts. Of course, you know that I'm going to come right back at you because, you know, the one
1
thing.
minute.
Yeah, I got it. I can do it in 30 seconds. So one thing you have to consider is you have the right to, you know, a third-party review. Exercise that right if you're so concerned. And that will alleviate all the issues. And none of this stuff is worth having any further conversation about because that's the point that makes the entire argument about staff go away. And we are paying this staff, and they should be, you know, doing their jobs, obviously.
Okay, anybody else have a 1 minute or less comment to make?
Gwen, we have Bob Monroe here.
Yeah, Bob, I'm sorry. I don't think it's appropriate to accept public comment at this point. I did ask for it at the beginning of the meeting. I don't think that you were on at the beginning of the meeting. So I just don't think it's appropriate unless other commissioners feel differently about that. Okay.
Committee, so that's why I'm late.
Wait, Gwen, just for, you know, just to be fair, in all instances, I think we always should be. John Toomey was very vigilant when we first started this about letting people speak at any time. I was a little opposed to that, but you know, in retrospect, maybe it's not such a bad idea. We don't want to exclude the public from commenting, I think.
Bob, go ahead. If you keep, Bob, I think you know that we're under a general time, a big calendar time pressure, and we're also under time pressure tonight. So if you'd like to make a brief comment, Bob Monroe, go ahead.
I was actually tuning in to try to offer a perspective on whether or not you keep the Board of Finance. But I see that this conversation, after listening to it for about 10 minutes, is about combining and simplifying the application process. And I would be all for that. I did one development project in this town, as I think most of you know. We ended up donating more acreage to the town than we actually built upon. And we had to just give up the idea about even developing the ridge there, which would have probably been our most exclusive properties and probably been the most profitable for us, because we figured we'd be building a large bridge, maybe a suspension bridge, quite frankly, over the small wetlands that were there. And we just had to give up on it. You know, we walked away, the town made out like crazy, and we walked away with nothing.
Okay, so Jim, do you have a brief comment so we can wrap up this conversation?
Sure. The year I built the densest facility, we were application number 3 at inland wetlands. We were in October. That partially explains why there's part-time staff. To compare that to South Windsor, there's 2 building officials. And this last year, there was $33 million in building permits taken out in South Windsor. So my project was $1.5 million, $2 million in work. And I think that staff members 1/4 or 1/3 time for the town. That's ample time compared to the workload.
Thank you. Is anyone ready to make a motion on this issue? Adam?
I move that the commission draft a charter provision to combine an appointed planning and zoning commission with an appointed inland wetlands commission, with the option given to the Board of Selection by ordinance to separate the bodies.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Jim, thank you. Is there discussion on the motion?
Gwen, I do have a question. I don't have any discussion, but I have a question.
Okay.
You mentioned that there was a statutory requirement for inland wetlands. What exactly is that requirement?
Well, it's a whole procedure that's set out that dictates how wetland commissioners have to review applications. So there has to be a finding of significant or insignificant impact. And if it's significant, then there has to be a finding of whether there's a feasible and prudent alternative to the activities. And that's it in a nutshell. But there's a whole lot of steps that are set out by statute, and then the Bolton and other towns' regulations follow those statutes.
So if a planning and zoning follows those same statutes, it's all right?
Correct.
I mean, if it's, because I thought you said, Rich, I thought you did say that the towns have combined.
Sure.
They have.
There's several towns and cities that have combined, John, and there are towns that have combined planning and zoning commissions that follow both sets of statutes. It's not that complicated.
Yeah.
Is there any other discussion on the motion?
Yeah, I have some discussion. I'm trying to understand if I can, it's more of a question. Adam, why did we tack on that last piece?
Because I agree with Jay, as I usually do.
And so tell me, I guess I missed Jay's point, that he thinks it should be the decision of the selectmen as to whether or not they combine the boards?
I would put it the other way, but that the default would be that there be a combined board. But if 3 years in, it turns out that's not working well, there's no way to fix it if it's enshrined in the charter permanently until there's a new charter. So it gives the Board of Selectmen an escape valve. Always remembering that we're giving the Board of Selectmen the power to appoint all these people in the first place. Yeah. So if they see a problem with it, they might, or they find a problem appointing appropriate people, then they might want the option to separate the boards. I'd also just very quickly speak to John's point, is that the Planning and Zoning Commission has been a combined board and is actually a combined board. There's an Aquifer Protection Agency that was created by statute. The town didn't just create a separate board. It appointed all the members of the Planning and Zoning Commission to be the Aquifer Protection Agency, and occasionally we sat as the Aquifer Protection Agency, created regulations, accepted applications and registrations, and occasionally still do things like that. Without any difficulty, we just would set up a separate meeting for that purpose, which is what they would do as an IWC.
Well, it's your charge.
Okay. Thank you.
So I appreciate the.
Yeah, I'd like to bring this discussion to a close very soon. Jim, do you have a very brief comment to make about this?
Question for Adam. Appointed, is it going to be staggered, and duration and time frame?
All to be worked out in the drafting, I think, as we have in the past.
Adam will write it. Don't worry, Jim.
Oh, wait a minute. That wasn't a volunteer.
Are we going to move the question, Gwen?
Somebody better.
There's a motion on the table. Is any, and if there's no other discussion, all in favor, say aye.
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 So Adam, Jay, Eleanor, Rich, Jim. Opposed? Nay? Abstentions? John, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your vote.
Nay.
Okay, the motion passes. All right, so now let's continue on with Chapter 3 of the Charter. There are more issues that we have not resolved yet, including, let's go to the question of whether the size of the Board of Selectmen should be increased to 7. And we briefly have touched on that, but we never have made an actual decision about it.
That's almost like the fly on Pence's head last night, Gwen.
So,
cat tail.
Yeah, I hope it's okay. My cat seems to need my attention when I'm in these meetings.
I was just wondering when maybe we could explain to Mr. Monroe that we passed over on that Board of the Finance Committee discussion already. And so he doesn't hang around here unless he chooses to, because that's not going to be something we're going to be discussing tonight, right?
Bob?
Thank you.
We are not going to be talking about that. We spent a lot of months talking about that issue. And so we're not going to be bringing it up for quite a while. I mean, definitely not tonight. And it's going to be a number more meetings before we bring it up again. If you would like me to, I could, if you would like some information on what we decided, you could email me and ask me some questions, and I'd be happy to answer those questions for you.
Brandon, thank you, Rich. Nice to see you.
Or read the last 2 minutes, the last
Yeah.
two sections of the minutes.
Actually, I could do that. I could send you the last two, the minutes from the last two meetings, even though they're not finalized. And that might help you. That would give you a very good indication of the discussion. Would you like me to do that?
That'd be a terrific one. Thank you.
Okay. Let me make a note of that. Are you at the same email that you've always had, Bob?
Yes.
Okay.
Emily, who's the president chairman, encouraged me to call tonight. That's why, and I was on board. We had a special meeting tonight. And that's why I just called in.
Okay. And you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting.
Actually, I'm going to dinner. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so let's go on to the question then of whether we want to increase the size of the Board of Selectmen from 5 members to 7. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
I thought we did, but I think that would make
Drop
the
poll.
most.
Fastest way. Yes.
This assumes finance committee?
This is the Board of Selectmen.
This assumes the finance committee?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Is that necessary? So if we did not do the finance committee, would that still be something we would consider?
I mean, personally, I don't really see why we would want to increase the Board of Selectmen. I could see having the 7-member finance committee and leaving a 5-member Board of Selectmen. I mean, I don't think they have to go. I don't think that just because we're proposing a 7-member finance committee that we would need to have a 7-member selectman.
Okay, let's vote.
Rich, I think that we need a little bit of discussion, and if we're going to vote, we need somebody to make a motion. So,
Okay, I'll make the motion so we can start the discussion. How's that?
Okay, what's your motion, Rich?
My motion is to leave the Board of Selectmen as a 5-member board as it exists today.
Is there a second?
Oh, sure, I'll second it, just for discussion purposes.
Okay, Jim? All right. Is there discussion?
Adam?
I've already made my feelings fairly clear. I think there should be more people on the Board of Selectmen to do more work and to include more viewpoints, especially if we're eliminating a separate Board of Finance. Also, if you have a Board of Finance where you're subsecting 3 members of a Board of Selectmen and putting them on the Board of Finance, that's a majority of the board of a 5-member Board of Selectmen, and I don't think that's appropriate. Because they then control the Board of Selectmen, those 3 people, and they all but control the board of the Finance Commission. And I think that's too much power in 3 people. Especially if one of them has to be the board of the first selectman, who's also probably going to be the chair of the Finance Commission. That's my reason.
I remember that now from when we had this structured conversation way back when.
We had a lot of conversations. You probably remember them better than I do, but
I knew that there was you make a valid point, Adam. You make a very valid point in regard to the fact that it's the majority of that Board of Selectmen if it's 5 members, and that makes me hesitate for a minute. So I appreciate your thoughts.
Thank you.
Glenn,
Yes, John.
I've seen the Board of Selectmen being 3 people. The town keeps growing, and even as the population may not be growing as much as we had expected it to, the responsibilities that the Board of Selectmen have to cover in so many different areas. And they already have a lot of committees to begin with, as you well know. I think it will make more sense to have a 7-member Board of Selectmen. And for those people that are upset that we're losing the Board of Finance, people that are running at the next time after the charter passes, there'll be some room for those folks who are really, truly interested in the finance portion of government to run for the Board of Selectmen and be on the Finance Committee. I think that might make it also a selling point for having a new Finance Committee as part of the combined Board of Selectmen. We need to keep moving into the 21st century because we're functioning as if it's still 1980.
Okay, thank you, John. Eleanor? You're muted.
I have a question for John. I don't understand why someone would run for the Board of Selectmen if they were not interested in the town finances. Could he just address that?
What I mean is for those people that are on the Board of Finance and they want to continue in that capacity, and it doesn't by any means preclude or assume that all the other members of the Board of Selectmen don't care about finances, but I'm trying to provide an outlet for those folks that are having their positions removed. It gives them an opportunity to continue doing what they're doing.
Does anyone have a concern about finding enough candidates to run for a 7-member board?
The 7 members of the board, they're already there. The 7 members of the Board of Finance are already there.
No, John. No, excuse me,
Yeah.
John. I meant is finding candidates to run for a 7-member Board of Selectmen.
Adam, can you have 5-member Board of Selectmen and 2 alternates?
I don't think you can have alternates to a Board of Selectmen, but I'm not sure that you can, but, and I wouldn't, but my answer to Gwen's question is, I would have a concern about finding all those people to run if we weren't eliminating 14 elected offices by making the Finance Commission and the
P&Z
and the P&Z no longer having to stand for election. And I think that among that pool of talented people, those of who might want to or might be willing to stand for election, it wouldn't be that hard to find 2 more people to run for first selectman, especially if that is staggered, but even if it's not.
Eleanor?
And Glenn, go ahead.
I think if the terms are staggered also, it's going to be much easier to find people to run for those. You don't have to find as many if the terms are staggered, right? You don't have to find 7 every time.
Great. Glenn, currently we have to have 12 people running for the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen. Now we only need to find 7. And that's staggered. It's not we don't put up 7 people every time. Although the board, especially if we go to a 4-year term, we always have to find 5. We always have to find 4 selectmen candidates and the first selectman candidate every 2 years. But the pressure will be off if we go to a 4-year staggered terms. I think there's enough people to fill this. It's less than a gap. It's less people that we need to find.
Rich?
And I'm sure among the three former town committee chairs on this commission, I think we would all agree that would make it a lot easier for each election.
Rich, go ahead.
Are we in agreement that we're going to go 4-year terms?
We haven't agreed on that.
Do we loop that into this conversation?
Yes, we should loop that
I
into
did.
the conversation.
Okay.
I guess I did.
Thank you, John.
Sorry.
Adam?
For me, the deciding issue is that 5 people is too small a group of people, or 3 people is too small a group of people to control virtually everything that this town does, including appointees to the Finance Commission, appointees to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Those 3 people can control a lot, and I think that's a deciding factor for me. But even if it weren't, I want to point out that a 7-person board works differently and more collegially than a 5-person board, in my opinion. Take a look at this board. There's 7 of us. We have very strong viewpoints, but even though it may be taking us a little time to get through things, in every case where we've had strong people contending about something, we've reached some kind of a consensus in a really great way. And I'm not sure that we would have done that with 5 people, especially if I were one of the 5.
Hey, Adam, could you clarify what you said about 3 people control the appointees to, and then you listed at least 3 boards. Now,
okay, so look at what we've done so far. If we're making, or we've thought about so far, if planning and zoning is appointed and also includes inland wetlands, and if the Finance Commission is appointed from among the 4 of those people are appointed by the Board of Selectmen, that's a potentially controlling group, right? So now if you have a 5-person Board of Selectmen, 3 of whom are going to serve on the Finance Commission, and those 3 people have the power to appoint a 4th, which is a controlling vote, and they have power to appoint 4 people for planning and zoning, which is a controlling vote, okay? And they have the power to appoint every other appointed board in the town. Those 3 people out of a 5-person Board of Selectmen, including probably the first selectman, but not necessarily, have the ability to pretty much run the table on the power generating or the decisional boards in this town. And I think that's too few people if the setup is going to be in the way we've talked about. A 7-member board gives you an opportunity for more viewpoints, an opportunity for people who want to band behind one board member and get that person elected to do so. And just diffusing power a little bit without necessarily making it unworkable. In fact, and again, I think the dynamics of a 7-person board work better than a 5-person board, and I've served on both.
On a 7-member board, then you would have 4 people making those appointments instead of 3.
Right.
Is that correct?
Instead of 3.
Okay.
Well, I mean, theoretically would control, yeah.
Controlling, okay. Yep.
Adam, you just
Rich,
for,
go ahead.
I'm so sorry, just for point of clarification, Adam, for Michael Stenkoff's benefit, you said Finance Committee, not Commission, right?
Yeah, Finance Committee, although I kind of like Commission better, but that's fine, whatever you guys want to use.
We'll
We're currently abbreviating everything to FC, and we will work out whether it's a committee or a commission in the conversation I have with Eleanor.
Okay,
Sure.
thank you, Michael. Okay, 4-year terms, we wanted to wrap that conversation into the expansion of the board. How do people feel about that? Looks like Jim's got a thumbs up. Everybody's got a thumbs up. Okay.
My
right.
thumbs up.
All right. So do we feel like we don't need to take a vote on that? But why don't we take a vote on the expansion of the size of the Board of Selectmen? Oh, no, there is a motion.
That is a motion that's pending, yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah. So the motion on the table is to leave the Board of Selectmen at 5 members. So is there any other discussion on that motion? And then I'll ask for a vote. Okay, so all in favor? Opposed? Say
Just do
aye.
it.
Aye.
Aye.
What happened?
Nay.
I'm not clear I thought we were talking about 7-member, not 5-member.
Yeah, we
But
were.
the motion is,
The motion is, the
Yes,
motion is to
currently on the
leave,
table is to retain the Board of Selectmen as a 5-member body.
okay, so I didn't get an accurate count of the votes. I believe there were none in favor. And opposed to that, could everybody please
Nay.
raise their hands again?
Nay.
nay.
Okay, and abstentions? Looks like, Rich, you were muted. Did you abstain?
I have to abstain. I can't oppose my own motion. Sorry.
Sure you can.
Actually, yeah, you can. There's no
Yeah, you can.
perfectly
No
fine.
prohibition against that.
Or you could withdraw your motion and
Too
the
late.
seconder could withdraw. But now it's too late because we voted.
Too late.
Once the
They
motion,
would never allow me to do that.
withdraw it. No.
So I believe that's 0 in favor, 5 against, 1 abstention.
No, it was 6 against 1.
Sorry,
Six against.
six against, 1 abstention.
Because we are a 7-person board.
Correct. Thanks for reminding me about that, Jay. A collegial 7-person board.
Yeah.
Would anybody like
Functioning
to?
well.
Would anybody like to make a motion now regarding the size of the Board of Selectmen?
I move that the Board of Selectmen be 7 members. The Bolton Board of Selectmen be 7 members.
Second.
Jay seconded that. Is there discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Say aye or
Aye.
raise your hand, please.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
See how easy that is with 7 people?
Okay, another.
Oh, I have a quick motion. Gwen, do we want to go ahead on the 4-year thing?
Oh, shoot, that's right. We did not, didn't we? I thought we agreed on that. Didn't we? We agreed on that without
We
a
just,
vote.
yeah, we agreed.
Yes.
Should we make it, it's consensus. Should we make it a formal vote for posterity?
I mean, sometimes we've been taking votes, sometimes we haven't. I
Okay.
don't think there's.
We're
it's
good with that.
Okay. Okay, another question, another recommendation under Chapter 3 is that the alternates, the ZBA and the alternates for all boards should be all appointed. Maybe this is 2 different separate issues, Rich and Adam. I think the 2 issues are that all our alternates should be appointed, not elected, and all alternates should be appointed every 2 years. Am I correct in framing those 2 issues? I'm looking at page 2 of your memo in the green. The second bullet.
Sorry. Gwen, I think the issue is, if my memory serves, and Adam will correct me if I'm wrong, that the way the current charter reads, it's very confusing, and we're trying to clean that up. Adam?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, well, a couple of things. I mean, one, I think it's kind of silly to elect alternates. To have them stand for election. Especially in some of the boards where they're not. But the idea of them being 2 versus 4 years, I'm kind of agnostic on that one. That just sort of made sense that as a board of, if we were staggering the Board of Selectmen, then each Board of Selectmen every 2 years is a new board, and they should stand behind appointments again. Even if it's just reappointing everybody, that's already in. There should be some decisional idea so that the election, has some meaning for the appointed board.
And the alternates would be appointed by the Board of Selectmen?
Correct.
Right. As they, are for any appointed board anyway, but these boards now are becoming appointed, are now becoming appointed boards that, well, it's really the Planning and Zoning Commission. I think that's the big one, but.
Did we decide to leave, did we talk about whether zoning board of appeals should be changed from elected to appointed?
I think one of them has to be elected if I think one or the other has to be elected, if I remember. Isn't that right?
I thought you did some research in that regard, Adam, and I thought that was.
Maybe I didn't. I thought I looked at that and it said one of them has to be elected, but
One of which?
Either the ZBA or the Planning and Zoning Commission has to be elected, I think.
Okay.
But maybe I better look at that, but
Because I have a note that at one of them, at the September 22nd meeting, I thought that we talked about making both P&Z and ZBA appointed. So
I thought we did too.
That's in my notes too.
Yeah, Adam, we better check.
Maybe we better look at that because.
Could you circle back to the statutes?
Was it Board of Assessment? Because we also talked about Board of Assessment Appeals and the town meeting moderator.
yes,
Right.
Those were both elected, right?
yes.
Right.
And Adam, you felt.
Do we need P and Z alternates if we're going to be appointing people? You just have the 7 and call it a day?
Adam, did you hear that?
Yeah, I did hear that. I actually think alternates on PZC are good because then you reduce the possibility of not having a quorum, and you also, because some things require 5 votes, it's kind of unfair to an applicant if something requires 5 votes and only 5 people show up, or something requires 5 votes and only 6 people show up, because they have less chance of getting the 5 votes.
Right. That's that super majority issue. I agree with Adam on that, Jim.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just, I've been in that. I've had an appeal taken in that situation, not from our board, thank goodness, but one that I represented people in, and it was really unfair because the 5th person, chose to not to vote present or abstain, even though he didn't really oppose it, just so that there wouldn't be the 5, and it was like a snow night or something where 2 people didn't show up because of the weather. And so it was just completely random. Somebody saw the ability to screw things up without actually voting.
A good chairman, Adam, a good chairman will, make the point to tell the applicant what the situation is and give him the option of whether he wants to go forward that night. Because
except it was the chairman. It was the chairman who did that.
I said a good chairman, Adam. I said a good chairman.
Let's hope I remember to do that the next time the situation arises and be a good chairman.
You will.
So should we pass over this issue of whether the ZBA and P&Z can both be appointed to give Adam?
Are you looking it up now, Adam?
I'm trying, but I'm not finding it yet. So.
Yeah, why don't we circle back to it?
Yeah.
Okay, so, then going back to the issue of appointing I guess we can't answer the appointment every 2-year question unless we know whether.
It can be done.
Yes, because if the ZBA has to be appointed, or elected, we can't have the alternates appointed, I think. Right? Wouldn't the alternates have to go on the board the same way that the full members get on the board?
Correct.
So why don't we pass that over? And I appreciate it, Adam, if you could look that up, which I see you're doing right now. Another recommendation was to eliminate the references to the judge of probate. It's no longer a municipal office.
ZBA can be appointed. Sorry, it's right in the statute.
Okay, but what about, can both boards be appointed, ZBA and P&Z?
Yes.
Yeah. Such board and such panel of alternates shall, unless otherwise provided by special act, be elected or appointed in such manner and for such terms as is determined for each by ordinance adopted by the municipality. Anything you can do by ordinance, you can do by charter, basically. So, because the charter is organic law.
Adam, you're not opposed to having the ZBA appointed, are you?
What's that?
I said,
No,
you're in favor.
I'm not opposed. I'm not opposed to having the ZBA be appointed.
So Gwen, should we make a motion in that regard and see if we can have a vote on that?
Yes, I think that should be documented.
All right, so then I'll make the motion that we change the ZBA from an elected board to an appointed board from this point forward.
Second,
Was that you, John?
yes.
I'm sorry, John, can I just clarify, and that would include the alternates, Gwen?
Okay.
Just,
Thank
John,
Okay.
Okay, is there discussion on, is there discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, John, what was your?
Aye.
Okay, that's 7. Okay, opposed? Abstentions? That passes unanimously. What about, I don't think we actually took a vote on changing P and Z to appointed. So I would like to have a motion on that as well.
I'll move that question. Change it from an elected board to appointed board to include the alternates.
Is there a second?
It looks like Jim.
Oh, thank you, Jim. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your hand or say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. What about the issue of the appointing the alternates every 2 years?
Well, wait a minute, what is that issue? I'm not sure I understand it.
Well, the recommendation, Rich, from you and Adam says ZBA and alternates for all boards should all be appointed every 2 years.
Right. How else would you do that?
You do 4 years.
No, but none of them are 4 years now, Adam, are they?
No, they are.
Yes. Yeah, they are. Well,
Planning and
They're
ZBA,
elected for 4 years.
yeah, ZBA is for alternate.
Okay. Okay. I'll move the question.
So what, I have a question first. Are these terms that we're talking about for P and Z and PZC, are they staying at 4 years?
No, they're moving to 2 years.
No, they can't do that.
I thought you wanted to do.
Planning and zoning commissions have to be staggered. And I think PZCs have to be too.
You mean ZBAs?
You're right, CBAs.
So it's a 4-year term staggered every 2.
Right.
Seems like good
Yeah.
policy.
Say it again, Jim?
Seems like good policy. That way that there's a fluidity to the system. In 2 years, if things aren't working out, different people may want to fill in slots.
Adam, wouldn't we keep that consistent with the alternates too then? Why would you deviate a full position from an alternate position?
Yeah, I guess you're right. It really probably doesn't make any sense. It probably doesn't make any sense. It would just create too much confusion, maybe.
Right. Gwen, what is the motion you're looking for then? Is there a motion required now?
Well, just for clarification, what we're talking about is whether we want to nail down the terms for the appointed planning and zoning members and ZBA members, the terms for the alternates. So we're talking terms here for full members and alternates.
All right, let me see if I can try this then. I'll move that we establish the full terms for both the Planning and Zoning and the Zoning Board of Appeals to a 4-year term staggered every 2 for both alternates and full members.
Second.
Okay, John seconded that.
Mr. Hayes, could you please repeat your motion? I just want to make sure that I have it precisely.
I'll move that we, let me just think of how I said this now. I move,
Establish full terms for the
Yeah.
zoning and ZBA members at 4-year terms, staggered every 2 years for both the full members and the alternates.
that's it.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there any discussion on that motion?
Just one correction of something I was incorrect about earlier. The ZBA does not have to have staggered terms. The Planning and Zoning Commission must have staggered terms. And a ZBA is typically, by statute, is 5 regular members and 3 alternate members unless otherwise provided by special act, which I think you can alter by charter, but I'm not sure why we would want to if the statute normally says 5 regular members and 3 alternate members, because that's probably what everybody in the state does. Doesn't say anything about requiring them to be staggered in the statute for ZBA, only for planning and zoning.
Does it say anything about the length of the term for the ZBA, Adam?
No, it doesn't.
Okay. Then I think we're okay here.
Right. Yeah, we're fine. We can do 4 years. We can do whatever we think is appropriate.
So we're talking 4-year terms for planning and zoning, ZBA, and the alternates.
Staggered.
Correct.
Staggered every 2 years.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Is there any other discussion on that motion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, raise your hand or say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that passes unanimously.
Because of a 7-member board.
A collegial one.
We're going to sing Kumbaya later. You know that, right?
Yeah.
The reality is, Adam, we're so far ahead of Gwen's schedule now, I think we should all go home early.
No, we're not.
No, I thumbed through your memo this afternoon, and we're not near close to being done with even your memo. So next item is eliminate reference to judge of probate. We no longer, Bolton no longer has a judge of probate. We no longer elect it. So
I'll move it. I move that we eliminate any reference to judge of probate in the town charter.
okay, is there a second?
Second.
John, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? That passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, I'm moving through Rich and Adam's memo. Oh, okay, here's an issue. This is on page 4 of the memo. Regarding should the unsuccessful candidate for first selectman be a candidate or become a member of the Board of Selectmen?
Well, I'll make the motion.
Excuse me?
Do you want me to make the motion?
Sure.
Okay. So I move that the unsuccessful candidate for the election of the first selectman in the town of Bolton is not a member, does not have the right to become a member of the selectmen, of the board of selectmen.
I will second that.
Okay, Eleanor, discussion? Jay?
Can somebody take me through, because I was only half paying attention, the fracas that gave rise to us thinking about this? What was this last election, 2 elections ago? We had the whole thing. And so it seems to me that this is that the reason this is on here is because of that. And what went wrong there?
So the reason that I think Adam and I had discussed it, and Adam will correct me, of course, had nothing to do with that, Jay.
Oh,
Yeah, it didn't.
Yeah, we just, I believe that you don't get a consolation prize when you lose an election. That's essentially the reason that I'm opposed to it.
Well, I
go back and forth on this, but
I thought that's what the 2009 charter did.
No flip-flopping, Adam.
I feel differently about this issue because I feel that anybody who is willing to put themselves out to run for first selectman has got to have a real interest in the town's future, real desire to serve the town, a willingness to put in a lot of time. So why not have that person serve on the Board of Selectmen if he or she loses the election, but gets more votes than everybody else? You know, it's not, if that loser gets fewer votes than everybody else on the ticket, on the selectman's ticket, then that person should be off. But if that person gets enough votes, then that person should be on. Because, I mean, it's a dedicated person, somebody who's willing to run for first selectman.
So Gwen, let me give you another thought then. Everybody runs for selectman and the highest vote getters are now the new first selectman.
But that person might not want to be first selectman.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just putting it out there. That's how it works in other communities, you know?
Yeah, but here's I'm sorry, I didn't mean to know.
Go ahead,
No,
yeah.
Go right ahead.
Okay, I go back and forth on this, but it changes with a 7-person board. For the 5-person board, I think it made a lot of sense not to have the unsuccessful candidate win. But with a 7-person board, it sort of, in my mind, reverts closer back to what Gwen is saying, is that if that's a person who's got, skills that would qualify them to be first selectman and a real interest in serving the town, then their being on a 7-person board doesn't seriously bother me. And if they turn out to be the leader of the loyal opposition, well, so be it. It's a 4-3 board or a 5-2 board or whatever it is. On a 5-person board, I think, again, it's a different group dynamic, and I'm not as happy about it. But on a 7-person staggered board, I think it's acceptable. So it's not a deal breaker for me either way, I guess is what I'm saying.
Richard muted.
Let me see if I could reason with you for a minute, Adam, in that regard. Do you?
Well, don't reason with me. Reason with somebody who's really powerfully strong on that side, like Gwen or somebody else.
Well, okay.
It's not a deal breaker for me.
Let me see if I can change anybody's mind here tonight. Do you believe that if you did it based on vote count, that you would be eliminating another candidate from the selectmen who was running that may have been more qualified? And now what are you going to do? Because there's that just doesn't want the first selectman's job.
Rich, I didn't follow that. Were you going back to your scenario where the top vote getter is the first selectman?
Okay, so yeah, sure. No, I'm not doing that scenario anymore. I've changed horses for Adam's benefit for a minute. So the 2 people run for the first selectman's office. And let's say we have 6 reasonably good candidates for the selectman's office, 3 from each party. because there's going to be 6 positions, right? The candidate that loses the selectman race now bumps one of those candidates off of the ballot, essentially. And that candidate they bump off may have been more qualified than them, number one. And number two, you're bumping those people because this person has lost. And the reality of it is that person may not have just not wanted to run for the first selectman office. So you got a candidate, maybe he was the first selectman, maybe she was the first selectman, but now she just wants to become a select person. And 2 other candidates run, and she gets bumped or he gets bumped. And you know what? They had more experience to begin with. And I guess that's politics in some regard, but I'll wait to hear what Adam has.
Aren't you describing exactly what the situation is under the current charter?
No. Well, yes, I am describing what happened.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know that it's right.
Okay.
I don't believe it's right. That's just my opinion, you know?
Adam?
I think it depends on how partisan you think that election is. Like, in theory, if somebody running for first selectman is less qualified than all the other people running for selectmen, they'll get fewer votes than everybody else, and they'll fall off because they won't bump anybody. It's only if you think that people will vote for them only because they have a party designation next to their name and they're the party's candidate for first selectman that they would bump somebody.
You know that's going to happen, Adam.
I know it is. I know it is. And that is a reason why maybe you shouldn't do that. But as I said, to me, it makes a difference between a 5-person board and a 7-person board. So the last person on the electorate for the 7-person board, it is.
You just made
a little.
Thank you.
But I don't disagree with you there. I'm not saying it's impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really feel like if anybody is willing to step up and run for first selectman and they get enough votes to serve on the board, they should serve on the board. I think people who run for that position have to know that they're going to be in for a lot more work than just serving as a selectman. And so they have already shown that they're willing to put in the extra time and the commitment. Those are the kinds of people that we want to serve on our elected boards.
Maybe. Let's move the question, Gwen.
Does that mean you're moving the question, Rich?
No, I'm asking you to please do it. You're the chairperson.
Does that mean you're asking me to ask to take a vote on the issue?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I'm actually, yeah. What was the motion again?
The motion is that the unsuccessful candidate for first selectman shall not become a member of the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, so I'm not quite ready to move the question if we're, I just want to make my thinking clear here. I am a little uncomfortable with someone becoming a selectman without winning an election. And when you vote for selectmen, you're voting for something different than when you're voting for first selectman. It's a different office. The votes are in a different category, right? Am I reading that right? And I apologize if I'm reading that wrong about how we do things, but that's a separate ballot item, right? So you're taking votes from one office and you're moving them to another, to the detriment of the people that ran for the positions in the other office. So I don't think I can get behind that.
Adam?
Glenn?
We could go to ranked choice voting for everybody, and then everybody could.
I agree with that, but then you have the wild card first selectman problem, which I think is not right. So
right.
I mean, do we let people run for both? Can every candidate for first selectman?
Yeah, you could. If we did it that way, we could let people run for both.
And sometimes happens in other communities. In the town of Berlin, Connecticut, everybody runs for the Board of Selectmen. And then they go have a little caucus as to, regardless of what the vote count is, they go have a little caucus as to who the heck the mayor's going to be, whoever wins the party. So I've seen the lowest vote getter become the mayor in that town.
We could do that and make the first selectman elected by the Board of Selectmen.
No, not by Board of Selectmen, Adam, by the party that wins. So if the Democrats get four out of the 7 votes, they've won the election. They go back, they caucus, and they decide who out of those 4 people is going to be the first selectman.
Yeah, but that's the same thing, because if they're the majority, then as long as they support somebody, they'll elect them first
It
selectman.
doesn't mean that it's the highest vote getter that gets it. It could be the lowest vote
Right.
getter on the Democratic ticket that gets to become the first selectman.
Not necessarily. That's just the parliamentary system.
No, but well, I don't understand.
That's how they do it in
Well,
England.
No,
any parliamentary system elects the majority of the House elects its own leader, and that person is the leader of the House until he no longer commands a majority of the assembly. So that's all that is. It's perfectly okay with me, but only if we, that would actually make more sense. But then doing it where somebody could bump somebody down the line as the first selectman. But
Jim?
I think it's getting to be too convoluted. I think when people go to vote, they think of the first selectman as the leader of the community, a unified leader. And if he runs for office and if he wins, when you put your name to run for first selectman, you're thinking it's a lot more time and you are going to be a leader, unified command of the town. When I go to the 9/11 ceremony at the fire department, the number of people that want to talk to the first selectman's a guest speaker. We had talked about leadership. We don't have a strong first selectman, but it's stronger than the other selectmen. It shouldn't be the ultimate popularity contest. Yes, he has to be popular enough to win the job, but he also has to lead and make difficult decisions. I think it should be first selectman, 4-year term. You vote for them. If they lose, they're out. They can wait 2 more years and they can run for the selectman. And if you want to have someone who's already on the selectman run for first selectman the next time up, they can do it. But it shouldn't be. The current system's too convoluted. You vote for the top 5, get in. I think we should move away from that, like per your earlier comments, Gwen.
Rich?
Adam, don't you think that Jim makes a point? Because now that I'm thinking about this, many times the first selectman isn't the high vote getter in the town. I don't know that it ever happens where they happen to be the high vote. Sandy wasn't the high vote getter in the town in the last election. So.
Yeah,
might have been high vote getter on the Board of Selectmen.
but that doesn't really matter though, Rich, right? If somebody like somebody on P and Z is a higher vote getter than the first selectman, I don't know.
I don't think P and Z is a distinction. I understand what you're saying, Gwen, and I appreciate the thought, but let's play it backwards. What happens if you had 6 candidates that ran for the selectman and every one of them got more votes than either the first selectman or the opponent of the first select person that ran for that election? That means that the town really wanted those 6 people on that Board of Selectmen and maybe didn't like either candidate for the first selectman. I don't know, I look at that and vote tallies count, I think.
Gwen,
Yes, John.
can you recall the charter before the one that we're using now? How did we do it? Because we changed it specifically we separated out the first selectman. Can you recall what we did
Well,
before? Because what I recall from years ago.
I'm pretty sure that at the last charter revision, I definitely remember bringing up this issue. So I think that charter still had the same process as we have right now, and that that provision that we're talking about was not changed. So John, as of that charter, which was 2008, first selectman was separated out.
Yeah. Because what I may be wrong because it's too long ago, but I can remember people running for first selectman, against Richie Moore. They ended up becoming a selectman. That was in the 70s and the 80s, and we've had at least 2 charter revisions since that time. It worked so that nobody really. The lowest vote getter was out. To have either 3 selectmen or 5 selectmen, whoever the 6th person was, the lowest one was out. And maybe we should go back to that, because that seems to be the most fair.
I thought that's what we have right now.
Yeah, I think what we have works.
So you're saying it should not be changed?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, is there any other discussion on this issue? The motion on the table is that by Rich, that the unsuccessful candidate for first selectman shall not become a member of the Board of Selectmen. Hearing no other discussion, all in favor? I see Jay, Rich, Jim, Eleanor. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Adam, Gwen, John. Okay, the motion passes 4-3. Okay, we've got about 8 minutes left. Let's see if we can tackle another issue. Let's see, we dealt with, I'm looking at page 5 of your memo, Rich and Adam. Alternates should not be listed separately. I think we took care of that. 2-year terms, we took care of that. Eliminate, okay, we took care of that. We increased the size, and now I'm going to page 6, increase the size of the selectmen. So there are going to be, then you do point out that there's going to have to be, because we are recommending the increase to 7, there's going to have to be some changes to language when we talk about majority of the Board of Selectmen. So those will have to be made in the drafting stage. One of the recommendations is that an affirmative vote of 5 members should be required for ordinances, sale and purchase of assets valued at over a certain level, or leases of a certain duration, and for personnel matters. So Adam and
Tackle that. Can we?
yes,
Good.
why there is no separate threshold now? Is that correct? Is this?
No, there is a separate threshold.
There is.
Look at the existing charter on the top of page 6, the highlighted language. Any action regarding the adoption, amendment, or repeal of ordinances not inconsistent with this charter shall require the affirmative vote of 4 members of the Board of Selectmen. So in a 5-person board, that's a supermajority. We propose that be continued for ordinances, but make it a affirmative vote of 5 members for the adoption, amendment, or repeal. And then the question is whether sale and purchase of assets of a certain size would require a supermajority, and whether leases of more than 4 years, and could they bind a future Board of Selectmen to a lease with more than with just a 4-member majority. And I don't know about personnel matters. I think that one, that was just a sort of question mark. I didn't feel strongly that it was a good idea, but
I think.
So why did you two? So you're adding, in other words, you're adding the purchase and sale of assets over a certain value, leases, and possibly personnel matters. So why did you two decide to recommend that?
So let me remind Adam of one thing first, Gwen, if I could, please. Yep. The personnel matters, Adam, if you recollect, I think we were only talking about heads of departments at that time.
No,
right?
Actually, we were only talking about the existing charter requires 4 votes to remove the administrative officer, and that's why we put this here. And we
Okay.
ended up deciding that it shouldn't. So that's the only issue that we were addressing. We've already addressed that. So I don't think department, I mean, everybody else we've dealt with, how they can be hired or fired. So I think really we're just the only, I mean, ordinances, if it takes 4 out of 5 now, shouldn't it take 5 out of 7? I mean, unless we think there's some reason it shouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, I
Sale
think
and purchase.
I don't see any reason to change that, but tell me why
Right.
you're recommending the sale and purchase of assets and leases.
Okay, here's why. Because the town buys an asset or sells an asset. Let's say the town's owned a piece of property for 50 years, and one majority of a board of selectmen can sell it and it's gone forever. Once it's gone, it's gone. Same token, you know, the town goes and buys an asset of a substantial value. That implies things like you're taking on debt or maintenance expenses that are going to bind the town for years and years and years. And I think it ought to take more than a simple majority to make those kinds of commitments. The same with a lease. I mean, in theory, I could take the town hall as 4 members of the board of selectmen and lease it to somebody else for 20 years. And, you know, once it's leased and the lease is valid and signed, how do I get out of it when the next board of selectmen thinks it was a crazy idea? Well, I think when a board of selectmen binds the town to some major purchase or major contract that's going to implement many years out in the future, it ought to do that with more than just a simple majority. It ought to have enough support that it's a consensus.
We could put a floor.
Because everybody's going to pay the taxes on it or be responsible for the taxes, regardless of whether they were, you know, voting for that majority of 3 or not. So, or 4 in this case, or not. So I feel like that's an indicator of how much consensus there is for that particular transaction. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
And Gwen, we could put a floor in if it made everybody more comfortable.
Well, 4 would just be a simple majority. That's
No. I said a floor for.
Right.
Right.
You did suggest.
Oh, I thought I did.
You did
Yeah.
suggest over 2 million, assets of over 2 million or leases over 4 years in duration.
Yeah, and there's no magic to those thresholds. I think I don't know where we got them. We might have gotten them from something that required a town meeting vote or something that required a referendum, maybe. I don't know. There may have been other indicators of why those thresholds were there. And
Well, we also could possibly tie it to either the grand list or something like that, so that it
Right.
could shift over the years. Eleanor and I we looked at the provisions that deal with items that go to referendum, and there are a bunch of different types of thresholds in there. So
I
possibly.
agree. I think we should decide whether we want anything to require a 5-member vote, and then leave the thresholds to the time when we get to those things for things like town meetings. You know, we have that sort of on a list that you and Eleanor are dealing with, and maybe let you kind of come up with your proposals for us to see if we like all of the thresholds. We'll just adopt them all at once and not have to go through them individually. Right?
Yeah, that seems to make sense. I think it makes sense to leave a supermajority vote in for ordinances because it's in the charter already. So why take it out? And so the question is whether we should add leases and sales of assets based on certain thresholds. So how do people feel about that?
Sales and acquisitions of assets based on certain thresholds.
Yes.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay. So do we agree? Do we agree that we want to add the supermajority for those 2 items? Do we need to take a vote on it, or does everybody seem to be in agreement? Jim, you good with it? Jay? John? Okay. All right. So we'll discuss, I'm just going to make a note here. We'll discuss threshold in connection with thresholds in, I believe it's chapter 9. Is that right, Eleanor? I think it's chapter 9. Okay. I think it's 9:01. So I think this would be a good spot to stop. Actually, you know what we have to do briefly is want to have a short discussion. Jay, I was hoping you would lead this short discussion, a preliminary discussion about how the ballot questions are going to be formatted. I asked Jay to help me out on this. It's going to be an ongoing discussion, and we've had a little bit of exchange, not much. But so Jay, will you take it from here?
Sure, and I don't have a good answer. So as I see it, and I started to read up on a couple of things that sort of the terminal phase of this process is us giving our recommendations to the Board of Selectmen. They answer us, they tell us what they agree with and what they don't. We can revise it, we send it, and they're the ones that determine what actually goes to referendum, unless there's some kind of petition process. Let's ignore that for the time being. So, what we have been talking about is if we have two options, one being change the Board of Finance to a Finance Commission, and one being everything else except change the Board of Finance. So in other words, we'd have what we're thinking is there's one thing that says, okay, all this stuff we're talking about tonight and everything, that goes. And then there's another question that says all of that plus change the Board of Finance to a Finance Commission. We can't have a three-headed question. The one thing, and this is really what they weren't lying when you talk to the state. It's in the statute. Everything has to start with shall and end with a question mark, and that's basically it. But we can't then say, would you rather have option A or option B? Because we can't do that. We can't do a ranked choice kind of thing. Now, I don't know if this is going to be our problem because, we may give our recommendation to the Board of Selectmen and they may decide, Sandy has said she would rather not do anything than do the finance. She would rather not change the current thing or sorry, that's hearsay, but that's, what was my understanding with her reaction. So if the whole Board of Selectmen says, you know what, we don't like the Finance Commission idea, keep it the same, then this discussion is mooted. We'll just have basically one question. Do you accept the changes proposed by the Charter Commission? So that's really, so one thing is how much time and effort do we want to put into figuring out the questions until we know whether we're going to have to, right? Because the Board of Selectmen might decide they don't want to offer those alternatives. But if they do decide they want to offer those alternatives, we'll have to figure it out. My concern is if you end up with a situation where you could have inconsistent answers to the question. So in other words, people may decide they like to go away with the Board of Finance, but not like any of the other changes we did, or the vote could come out that way. And it could get really weird. So I don't know what that comes out to, except for the fact that we can have multiple questions. Who knows whether we're going to want to? Who knows whether the Board of Selectmen is going to want to? And that's about where we are. One other thing, as I was reading through that, we do owe a report to the Board of Selectmen at the end of this. And I will start to try to keep track of the charge they gave us. We are obligated to address in our report how we handled each of those issues on the charge they gave us. So I'll try to start keeping a running list because some of those are things we dispose of in 2 seconds of discussion. But we do owe that when we send it up too.
Yep.
All I got.
Yep, exactly. And just to add to that, Jay had pointed me in the direction of some results that are online, Secretary of State's office. And there are a number of towns that put up multiple questions. I saw the town of Brookfield one year put up 10 separate charter questions. So, we could probably do it that way, but is the public really going to have the patience by the time they get to question 9, question 10, to really be thinking about what those are? I kind of doubt it. But so, I think it's going to be tough with all the changes that we're making. It would be very tough. Even if we grouped similar questions together, we would have a number of questions on the ballot and might lose people. Rich, did you want to say something? Rich?
You're on mute.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna hold it. I want to check something.
Okay. All right. Jay, thank you for working on that issue. And it's an ongoing one, obviously. Next meeting is Thursday, November 12th, 7 o'clock. It looks like I doubt we're going to be able to meet in person based on an email that I got from Josh recently. So we'll probably still be in the Zoom format. Adam?
Gwen, did you get the memo or I got an email today as chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission saying that that the commissions are supposed to put on their agendas and vote on next year's meeting schedule before December 1. So that means we would have to do that and then post the meeting. So if we're going to have any meetings in 2021, we have to do the vote on that next meeting, which is November 5th, I think you said, yeah.
November 12th.
November 12th.
Now, why would we have to do it at the next meeting? Because we've got 2 in November, 2 in December.
No,
I think we have to do it before December 1. Let me look at the email. I don't know why they didn't send you one.
She's on the copy. I got the email.
You did? Okay, but I didn't see your name on it.
That's interesting. Well,
I didn't check email later in the day, so
this came early this morning from Josh's administrative assistant, Gwen.
Right.
Early, but before noon.
Here it is. I didn't see Gwen in it.
I thought I did. I thought my secretary printed it for me. I thought I saw Gwen's name on it.
No, I saw your name and my name.
Okay.
But I didn't see Gwen, unless they sent it in, multiple.
What time? Oh, Kathleen McKavanaugh. Here it is. Here. Yeah.
Okay. Well, if one
I'll
of you.
forward it to you.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I should have done that before. It just occurred to me that you might not have got it.
Yeah. She's not on.
I guess I will put that on. I'll put that on the next agenda then. The agenda for November 12th. Jim?
Glenn?
Just a second, John.
Okay.
Jen?
Just a quick thing. I hope next meeting, and I'll send it to you, Gwen, for distribution. I've been talking with Jill Collins, Finance, Josh Kelly, Kristen, and Kusal. If they have any other tweaks they'd like regarding the finance information. They had questions when we were talking to them about eliminating the Board of Finance. So just did a little bit deeper dive. I don't think it's anything major. I'll submit it to you, Gwen, as just a list like Rich and Adam did with their work. So we can review that when we do Chapter 8 also.
Okay, great. Good. Thank you, Jim. John, what would you like to add?
My calendar says that we're meeting on Thursday, October 28th.
Were we?
We don't have to, but
I think
that's what I have.
Thursday's the 29th.
29th.
29th, sorry, the 29th.
Oh,
Right.
yeah. Oh, you're right. You're right. Thank you, John. So the agenda, I had the wrong date on the agenda. Yeah, sorry about that. Of course. We've got 2 meetings in October. Of course we do.
So
I'm sorry,
the
John,
November,
you cut out there.
the November, yeah, the November date's not wrong. It's just more confusion.
I thought that seemed like an awfully long break, but I
Yes,
never
good. Thank
argued.
you
Yeah,
for
me
correcting
too.
me.
I think about it.
Well, that's what made me look at the calendar.
Yes, well, thank you
Yeah,
for
I was
correcting me,
confused
John.
too.
Okay, so if there's no other business, I'll call the meeting adjourned. And Michael Stankoff, thank you very much for taking minutes. Nick Levine, thank you very much for recording for Community Voice Channel. Commission members, again, thank you for all your good work. And we will be in touch and see you on October 29th.
I know.
Okay. Good
Good
night.
night, everyone.